Okay. I guess I am the center of attention now. So what are some of the technical challenges right now that we're all facing? Many of us faced it today, if you're paying attention to your email at least, right? Email, cybersecurity in general, right? So what are some of the actions or steps that you're taking to try to combat that? You know, we don't have, I'll frame this a little better here. Was up at a cybersecurity conference at Microsoft's Redmond campus, and they spend over $1 billion a year on security, cybersecurity. $1 billion a year. Anybody have that in their budget? I don't have it in my budget, but you know what? We're running the same stuff. We have servers hosted in our data centers. We have computers in our networks. We have networks in general. Same stuff Microsoft has. They're spending $1 billion a year to try to protect it and still not successful. What can we do? Go on, throwing it out there for ideas. Talk about some of the stuff that we're doing. Okay, so user training. So that works for email phishing and stuff like that. Right. So I sent out an all-staff email, which in Salem-Keizer can be dangerous at times. And I've responded to emails ever since I sent that out about 2 hours ago. So I immediately got about 50 responses. I did that. What should I do? So, yeah, user training. Who believes they have solved the user training problem? Anybody? What are some of the steps that you take in user training?
Repetition.
Repetition?
We just started a video. They log into something called Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
We made a little video and they have to answer some questions.
So did you do it as part of your mandatory training at the beginning of the year?
Just starting it now. It's
Okay.
something new, and some other guys in our department found some funny videos to make it a little entertaining.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like the blood pathogens and stuff, so
Mhm.
they have to watch the...
Right.
The required
Like
training.
smart, yeah, like
Yeah. In Salem-Keizer, for this coming school year, it'll be part of our mandatory training.
yeah, that's what we're leaning towards. And starting with, would you take this?
They're real fun, though. They're entertaining.
Right. Are those from, are they open source or are they from the Know Before, the Kevin Mitnick?
I assume they're open source.
Right.
The guy that showed us.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe you could share those with the ACPE list, because it's definitely something we all struggle with.
Part of it is keeping the line communication open. Sometimes you know when you did something wrong, don't jump on spam things, because they won't come to you next time you jump on them.
Oh no, I beat the hell out of them. I take their computer away, lock their account.
We've talked about the wall of shame.
Yeah, they gotta feel comfortable asking the question. I think I did something that I shouldn't have done.
So once you don't know the fix,
Yeah.
you'll find out later.
We
So-
started a knowledge base and, you know, a whole bunch of how-tos and stuff, but the minute that came out and stuff, our manager or the guys in our department posted on there steps, what to do about it, how to distribute, and had all one step after another of what to do. And
Right.
immediately after that, you know, we're trying to train them to go to that knowledge base.
What are some other?
Is that they look real to the untrained eye, and we try to have a single source or identifiable source of reminders and information. So that most of them have the link, for example, from here, and then I get probably somebody send forward an email to me saying, "Is this from you?" And it's, you know, the mail department or from
Right.
Microsoft cell phone. It really is very easy when you're busy to make that error. And something that we might see right away is not identified by the user. So we're trying to continue to educate them and tell them anything generic. Anything that isn't from us specifically is not a question.
Right. Well, it's been more and more difficult to the point where even sometimes on 2 emails specifically, I struggled to identify, and I can normally spot right away and just hit delete, who was in the OMS session with me. So if you saw the number of emails, so it showed there in the last 30 days I've gotten 1,400 emails. So I've learned pretty well how to go through my emails, identify things I need to do, things I don't need to do, but it's now, they're getting smarter. Their grammar is getting much better. That's usually the number one sign. So what are some other steps that you're taking? Is Redmond, Olympia, I don't want to bring up any sore points, but any one of those 2 school districts? So how many of you heard about the W-2s leaving the district from a phishing attack? How do you respond when you hear something like that? What are you doing within your district? So this is kind of a leading question here. As soon as I actually saw it, I'm a member of COSIN, so COSIN sent out a big thing, and I noticed that it was targeting school districts. So first thing I did was send it to my cabinet, my director of finance, my director of HR. I sent all that information to them. If you're on the ACPE list, I sent it out to the ACPE list to say, look, notify your people. And not 2 weeks later, Redmond School District got snagged. So the stuff is real. You can't just assume it's not going to happen to you. Redmond School District, excellent IT staff. Very good engineers. It still happened to them. And, they're not a big, huge school district, but enough to know that something like that shouldn't have happened at Redmond School District, especially, and I'm not blaming Redmond here, there was plenty of forewarning. So I think one of our roles that's changing is we need to be proactive and pass that information along and not assume that it's not going to happen to us. Today, as soon as I was looking at just on my iPhone, I have Apple News. I saw a Verge article that said Google Docs hack. So I immediately loaded up, and within 15 minutes, I had an all-staff email. And keep in mind, that's 5,000 people that I'm emailing, so I don't do it very lightly. But, it's like, okay, we have Google Docs. It's a valid threat. Educate your users. So, what other cybersecurity things?
One that keeps me up at night is ransomware,
Mm-hmm.
because I know we have domain admin accounts and domain admin rights to have email, which is a big security. You don't use the regular domain admin rights. Well, they've actually taken every SharePoint in the district and can lock it up if one goes wrong. So separating the things could take years to do, but audit who has the powers because it's
Right.
key.
So, if you're willing to be honest, how many of you have domain admin rights on your regular account?
No.
On your regular account?
I have 2 accounts.
6 months ago, I would have had my hand raised, even in Salem Kaiser. In Hermiston, I was the domain administrator, so it was easy. But yeah, it's a risk now for sure. How many of you have watched a video on how to pass the hash attack? Have you watched? Microsoft has a great video. Literally 30 seconds. They've moved laterally through your whole network. 30 seconds, all it takes, if they get your account and you have elevated rights. They own your network at that point. How many of you have heard of LAPS? L-A-P-S. A few? Okay. Want to talk about what it is? Heard of it or use it? How many of you are using? Okay. So LAPS is Local Administrator Password Solution. It's a free Microsoft tool, but one of the problems nowadays, especially with the ransomware and malware, is that once they get on to your network, and all it takes is one physical machine, one teacher, one regular user clicking on that malware, they're on your network. If you have your administrator password, your local administrator password, the same across all your workstations, you're toast. Because they can go and basically install their little programs on every single one and wait for the domain administrator to log in, and then they own you. It really is that simple. It's kind of scary how simple that is. What the Lapse tool does is it creates generic, random passwords on your local machines that you don't have to manage. You just install the tool. It creates the passwords. It manages them. It changes them every, I think it's a defined frequency. Help desk staff still have tools to get the password really easy. But it protects you from that lateral movement. Again, without the Lapse tool, you're completely exposed to one machine is all it takes, and they can move laterally without administrator privileges. They can move laterally across your network until they find the domain administrator machine that you're using, and then you're owned at that point. With the ransomware, again, I learned this at the Microsoft Security Summit. What they're doing in the bigger places where they can actually extort some money is they're exploring your network silently for a period of time to learn how you're organized, where you're storing your backups, where's your file system, what are all your workstations. When they launch their attack, and this happened to San Francisco Metro, their train thing, when they launch their attack, they basically encrypt 100% of your data, delete all of your backups, and at that point, you're out of business. It's very effective. Now, surprisingly, what I don't get is they're only asking for like, $1,600 in Bitcoin. You would think they would be asking much more. It will get there. I guarantee it. And I guarantee school districts will get hit at some point as well once they realize that we would probably be willing to pay to get our data back. It's amazing. School districts aren't heavily funded. We'd have to struggle with budget, but I guarantee you that superintendent of your school district will find money if it means that, we can get back to normal.
I believe it would be really helpful to have an offline backup in such a case as well.
Okay. So that is one of the recommendations that came out. How do you do that?
Error gap. If there's any automation in any way, you can find all of that too, block it up.
So we've mostly moved away from manual backups. I think most of us, that was the old stick in the tape, change it out every night. Anybody still doing that? I'm sorry. But if you're not on tapes, I think most organizations have moved to on-disk backup. How do you take an on-disk backup? Let's take Salem Kaiser. Our backup is about 150 terabytes. What do you take that offline on? Right. But that's the only safe way to do it, because if you can get to it and they have you routed across your network, they can get to it as well.
One way around that is we're starting to do is we got put up on Amazon on an ad hoc basis, so it's done by hand with an account that's not a global account on the network anywhere.
Right.
And there's a tool called rClone. If you haven't heard of it, I highly encourage you to recommend it. It will take anything from any local disk and stick it on any cloud service provider, Backblaze, whatever. It's like rsync, but really souped up.
So how do you take it offline at that point, though?
I just remove the configuration from my rClone.
Right.
It doesn't exist anymore, and if they get into my encrypted password store, then they will know that, yes, I have an account up there. But other than that, there's nothing on my network that says that even exists. Okay?
Right.
There's nothing that they could find locally. It's not an automated process, so it's an ad hoc process. And we do it depending on the data we have. It's either once a year or monthly for like student record data and or payroll data, and it's locked up.
Right. So if I get into your AWS administration panel, I can't find it?
If you got into that, you could. But again, we keep that one separate from everywhere else.
And I know this sounds like pie in the sky stuff, but the reality is they're hacking your network and they got on your network because they know how to find those things. Who's been here when Jack Maynard's given a session? Anybody? He can find whatever you try to hide from him. Anybody with that skill set, they can find that stuff. That's a good solution. I do the same thing with something very similar to that with our finance documents. But ultimately, they can find it if they really want it. In our realities in K-12, they're probably not going to search that deep. Yet. Our biggest risk is when they find out that all of the student information in our SIS system is valuable information. That's when we're pretty much, to be blunt about it, screwed. If Microsoft's spending $1 billion a year and they're still getting hacked, we have no protection whatsoever. You know, we can put up all the firewalls we want. They'll figure out. All it takes is one user to click a link. And that's our biggest weakness is, you know, how many people have, I don't know how to word them, threat policies about if you click those links, your job is at risk in their HR manuals.
We'd have no superintendent.
Right. Right. I know of one school district that has them, but it got to the point where, you know, that's the only way to protect yourself. When you're in the corporate world, you learn pretty fast your job's on the line, and if not yourself, your colleague that clicked the link, not sitting in their seat anymore. I mean, that's the way it is in the corporate world. I'm not saying that's the right place to be, but since we don't have that capability, what can we do to encourage users other than repetition and training? That's really what it comes down to. It's because it's the users, because that's the easiest route to take, right? So nowadays, they're not hacking your network. They're hacking our users, because that's the path of least resistance.
So one of the things that we do also, so email hacks happen all the time. We now have got 4 little scripts that tail my email logs, and they track most of the hacks within a few minutes of it happening. The minute the person starts trying to use my account for spamming or something, I disable the account. And we've got it for if an account starts to send too many emails. Basically, if the account doesn't act like it should be acting. So sending too many emails, sending emails to people that they don't normally send to, stuff like this. So I can't stop the user from clicking on the link, but at least I can stop the damage afterwards.
Right. And you're Ski from North Shore, I take it?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. His environment's a little bit unique from most of our environments in that you do have the capability to tail your mail logs. Anybody on Exchange, Google, or Microsoft Office 365 doesn't really have that capability, and in most places wouldn't have the skill set to do it anyways. Not everybody has a ski available to them. But yeah, I don't know. That's the one that I'm struggling in Salem Kaiser because ultimately it's it's the guy that sits in my seat that's at risk of all of this if it was big enough. I've seen many a CIO fired in both corporate and public world from a security breach. So in my case, that's me. So I'm trying to figure out how to, cover my butt and keep my job.
Bring that up, with your...
Absolutely.
Are they
Absolutely.
talking about something like if the teacher click on this, it's a warning the first time, you do it the second time, and you could leave your... Is it that serious?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I've educated my superintendent to know that it's not a matter of, if. It's just when. So I've thrown my whole staff under the bus so many times. I can't control, none of us can control what our staff do. I can control what my staff do, and I can take my own actions if it was necessary, right? And they all know that. There's no reason anybody in IT should ever be that person that clicked the link. If it is, then that's, for me, I would take it as a failure on my part to educate my own staff, much less the staff of the whole school district.
So what's the path that your email takes to come into your district?
It's all 365, but it does pass through us because our spam filter is local.
You have a local spam.
Yeah.
We wash, I think, effectively 3 times. We run through Google filter for gets watched kind of.
Right.
You'll see. It does stop links.
Hmm. No.
But that stops a lot of the other crap.
How many people have phished their own users? What did you learn from that, Ron?
I learned that even the IT department will click on it, so my education program was lacking. I didn't think it was very funny. I even used an internal account to fish it.
We learned that 64% click, no, we say, don't open this email. We send warning 2 weeks before.
Right.
It's coming, don't open. After that, 64% open, and out of that, more than 45% click on the link. But what I found the most interesting, when they get in warning from the help desk, from the person they know exactly that it's help desk person, forwarding to the message that it's a phishing, don't click. Luckily, our help desk person is smart enough that he doesn't forward it, he take a picture, he forward it, and then we get in help desk, we cannot click on the link that was on your email.
Yeah. Anybody else fish their users? Can I see any more hands? What'd you learn?
That's when it's almost the exact same thing, but just, I mean, we didn't do all the users, we did a choice group.
Send out a warning before.
Right.
Yeah. We attach link to the training. If person open email and link, they must take the training.
Right. That's actually a great idea there. So the challenge I have, any large districts in here, 25,000 or up? A few? So because of the challenge of trusting emails and stuff like that, I've taken on the role of being that primary communicator for stuff like that. And we've trained our users, don't trust email, don't trust email. So now when I send them an email, I get a response back, is that you? I'm like, yes. So what did my email today say? Do you remember? You haven't written? Dude, get out. Dave? You didn't? 2?
I don't know, maybe.
3. So obviously I need to work on training my staff too, Ron. So I started out, this is Robert Silva. Really? Your director of technology. Please be aware of this Google warning. Because otherwise they'll email back, well, I wasn't sure if this was you, so I deleted it. I've had buildings send out an email to their whole staff to say, that message isn't really from Bob. Remember what he said, delete it. And it's like, no, it is from me. Read the email signature. They're not that creative yet.
Jamie's creative solution. I posted a list probably a year or two ago, but the idea of taking a picture of yourself holding up a note that says, "This is me," or whatever.
Hold up today's newspaper.
Obviously, my email address can be spoofed, but it would be so unbelievably spear phishing to get a picture of me and Photoshop the note and put that in the email going to staff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where it's almost like a two-step authentication.
Right.
So here's me. Don't send your password through email.
Now in Office 365, we started uploading our photos for the people that would actually go take photos on yearbook day. That started working until we had our SPF records configured wrong and had outside emails forged as us start showing the pictures as well. So it was a good, valiant effort to begin with, but then it lost credibility almost immediately. So now people don't trust those pictures anymore.
So that's why you hold up the note that says do X and Y.
Right.
Like a hostage thing where they hold up the newspaper.
That's what I was thinking. I should take a picture of the newspaper. It's really me.
We've had a couple of schools tell us, email is dead within their own school, and I just comment and feedback. And so we've been starting to communicate in other vehicles too. Like we have a weekly staff newsletter called the Lighthouse, and it goes out every week. And there's some interesting things on it. There's ads, things for sale. So it's a ticket if the person wants to, they'll read some of it because they want to read some of the stuff that they used to. So there's something like this, one of the first articles is going to be about cyber and other information.
Right.
Because I can't tell you how many people say, oh, I didn't read your email.
Yep.
And it's just becoming more and more ineffective because of the volume.
Yeah, it's definitely in the volume. And in Salem, it gets, I'll say, doubly worse. I had people in Hermiston that would delete my emails just because of the volume. In Salem, we've tried to introduce other forms of communication. We brought up SharePoint as an intranet. We put news stories in there. We brought up Yammer as a social tool. Number one complaint, I don't have time for that. It's like, but at the same time, their number two complaint is you guys don't communicate and we never know what's going on in the school district. And I guarantee you that's not unique to Salem-Keizer. So let's talk about that. How do you solve that problem? How do you solve the email problem? You must know my assistant IT director.
I know that whenever I send a long email, I get a call from the person who emailed saying, hey, I saw your email, what was it about?
Yeah.
So if it's too long, then they call me and ask me, not with these three people specifically, but in general, that's
Right.
what happens. So yeah, concise, but not so concise that it looks fake, because actually longer emails tend to look more authentic for some reason.
A lot of times at the top of our email, I'll put a TLDR on it. So it just gives like a 2-sentence version of what I'm talking about.
Right.
And then if they're actually interested, they can read.
Can you expand that acronym so that everybody understands? TLDR?
Yep. Oh, sorry. What it means too long, didn't read.
Payroll sends a message with the people with that stop, 2 lines explaining how to open their pay stub. Nobody read it. They call help desk, we can't open it anymore. So maybe color in the text. That's
Anybody trying solutions other than email?
But like today, I call to the principals or the head secretary, say, put an all call out over the intercom. I mean, don't click on this. Read your email. You're going to get an email from the head of our technology department or something like that.
People like entertainment. Give them videos. Be goofy in it. And that's when we get the most views. On our YouTube videos, when we put stuff together, we're doing changes to our web help desk. We send an email out with a video link, and that thing is just like skyrocketed on views, and everybody knows that.
Right.
Have you seen this video yet? So make your own little viral videos, send them out there, and you get way better adoption reading that than viewing that. Somebody reading an email.
You can try that, Jeremy. You're pretty goofy. Anything else? Anybody using Slack?
Yeah, we do within our IT department.
Within IT department? Anybody using it at the district level? No? Yammer, any other similar tool?
We use Hangouts.
Hangouts? At the district level?
Yeah.
We still have time. What are some other topics? Come on.
How many copies of your backup do you have? I'm not talking age, I'm talking copies of each one. Because it's important that you do free, and it's hard to verify.
Right. Anybody still verify their backups? Is that something you're supposed to do nowadays?
Every unemployed administrator has a comment.
Yeah.
They didn't do it.
Well, and that goes to the whole cybersecurity thing. I mean, backups is probably the number 2 risk nowadays for people that sit in my seat. You lose your data, you lose your job. I mean, and that probably applies down the tree in some scenarios. Not every scenario. Who heard about what happened to Beaverton a couple of years ago when their data center fire suppression system exploded, pretty much shattered all the hard drives. It didn't shatter them, but it ruined the heads on them. And their, I think it was their ERP system, had been on incrementals for a year and a half, and the master was no good, or one of the incrementals was bad or something, but they pretty much, at that time, they thought they were just dead in the water. It took, I think, a week or 2 weeks to find a company that created a little simple, like $1,000 program that could rebuild their ERP, and payday was just like days away. So, and you can't not pay 5,000 employees. It doesn't go over well. So we've moved. Right now in Salem, we just brought on a nimble storage array, and we bought 2. So we have one on-site, one off-site, and then we have backup from the off-site one. So we actually have 4 copies, or will have 4 copies. We have the live data, a snapshot of that data locally, a snapshot on the remote side, and then a backup version of the snapshots from there. So I believe in CYA. You had your hand up? No. Speak up.
So we're not quite 25,000. And a lot of our users, we're about 3,000 students, about 300 employees. And over the last 5 years, we've really done a lot to jump in with Google. And over the last couple of years, we have really started moving away from local storage or network-based storage. And so we're beginning to really heavily trust the data that our users have in Google's cloud is secure and backed up incrementally in a way that even if they delete it themselves, we still have the ability to recover it.
It's not secure today. It's not secure today. As soon as they gave authorization for that app has access to the drive.
Well, so there's a great example. So they got access to the drive, so a user loses access, they give out their password, somebody goes and deletes everything. Well, I, as an administrator, can go in there, I can go back 30 days, and incremental restore it.
Right.
No big issue. If they got a hold of my account, I don't know what Google has in place to prevent me from
If you're a super admin, they could send you an authorization for everything. For everything. And if you push it, then you would give them everything.
Sure. So so there's a little social component there, and I don't know what Google does on their end to say that's odd that they decided to take down their entire, 3,000 user, 4,000 user. I don't know what they have there. I don't know if anybody does.
Well, if you're a super admin, you have two-step verification turned on, right?
So there is two-step
because
verification.
Because if you give them your password, they try to do anything with it.
Yep.
It's going to prevent them doing that second step.
Yep.
Until you just got fished and accidentally logged into that it looked like it gave them the 2,000.
So that's a possibility, that is me being very aware of these types of things, and it's my job to be aware of those things. And me having limited, I'm one of 2 people that have that access. So that has been something that we've been heavily relying on to also prevent things like malware and crypto viruses. So they affect a user's machine, and they affect maybe their network drives. We've got things in place to help prevent that, but we just had one hit Monday, and it affected 8 users. We've got a monitoring platform that we check daily that sits up on a board, and we see where things are at. I was training a new user. I was like, hey, so this is our monitoring system, and normally we look up here, we see like 1 or 117. Well, that's kind of unique. And so I checked, opened my email, had some alerts, went through. Our system identified it, removed the files, prevented it so it didn't get too far. But we had a user last year who got a crypto virus, and it did affect the machine off-site. They came on, it began to infect their network files. We were able to recover those, but all their Google stuff worked just fine. There hasn't been that we've seen something that affects that infrastructure yet.
Are they using just Google as a cloud service, or are they using Google Drive? Because Google Drive.
This was interesting. So they had Google Drive, and it did affect the things in Google Drive, but those applications. But currently, the crypto virus did not have the ability it wasn't programmed to encrypt any Google Doc-based items. So Microsoft products were affected, and Adobe products were affected in text documents. But even with that, because they had it synchronized in their Google Drive, we just went ahead and just figured out, this happened within a relatively short period of time. We just stepped back to the day before it happened, and we recovered everything within about 5 minutes on their Google Drive, which then restored it to their machine. Another thing that was kind of an interesting of note is that even though a Word document got encrypted, you couldn't launch it via Word. If you launched Google Drive web portal and previewed the Word document, it showed you the content. So although it was encrypted, you still could get access to the.
I saw that post. It had to be cached because it's a fully encrypted file. There's no way Google could have gotten some previews. It had to be cached.
Could be. But we tested it a number of times, and so so there was one flaw in that, that user also had access to a shared Google Drive that had files that were affected, but when we did the restore, because they didn't own that folder, those didn't get recovered. And it was kind of an obscure folder that a group of folks used, and it wasn't until a year later that another user came across these files. They're like, what is this? And we were like, oh, red alert, red alert. And so we looked, and we're like, well, nothing's active, nothing's happening. What's going on with this? And so we traced it back. We realized what had happened. But even that, we were able to pull the data from those files via preview. Oh, look, there's the content. And anything that was of value, they pulled. But so that's one of the things that we've been relying more heavily, less on our own infrastructure and more on this larger infrastructure. I mean, there's a bigger discussion there, but at our size, we've been able to benefit from that, from both security.
From Oregon or Washington?
From Washington.
So let me ask the question, because that's something that we all deal with at one point or another, to cloud or not to cloud. As I'll make a general assumption here that we're all tech geeks. Where's the fun?
Well, actually,
if I throw it all up there, then I'm just a system manager geek. Yeah. Where's the fun of physically working with that stuff?
Well, you get a programmer. You got the wonderful HDI, it's a lot of fun.
The problem that we're running with the cloud is I can get capital dollars easy, relatively easy. I can't get any operational dollars. The cloud is all out of operations. We can't figure out how to fund the cloud. We would love to move more stuff to it, but I can't.
Anybody from Lake Stevens in here? So I think it was Lake Stevens just moved pretty much 100% of their infrastructure into Azure. 100%. Everything up into Azure.
Do they have any local DCs?
I was only involved in a small conversation with them, but my understanding was they brought in an outside consultant, and the recommendation was to move everything up into Azure.
I can't get a straight answer on that one. Anyway.
Yeah. So.
Our superintendent is questioning, again, we still don't really have a clear. I think I would trust Microsoft more than I would trust Google as far as data access and storage, because they really won't commit to. They say that they are acting as an agent of the district, but all of our legal team says is that's not possible. They can't. They're not bound by any legal documentation at all.
You a Washington school or?
Yeah.
Because Oregon, the Attorney General actually certifies that Google, is spawn for all the HIPAA, or well, at least for purpose.
Yeah.
And that was right, but they're still not valid.
Exactly.
But the state of Oregon assumes all the liability on that. It doesn't go down to the district.
No, ours hasn't. And so the superintendent's not keen on the idea, although we recognize that it's an extremely valuable tool. Now we have the challenge of we're really not sure which documents teachers are publishing out on the Google Drive, which we don't know who has access to it or how it's accessed. On the back end of it, which I have to trust, why would they want to look at that crap? I mean, really, it's nothing else. But that's the challenge that we have. So until I get a confirmed, oh yeah, this is perfectly fine, then I could say, all right, well, maybe it's a viable answer for us.
So one of the downsides of Office 365 is that it's really hard to share externally with people and remain secure. One of the downsides of Google is that it's really easy to share externally with people and hard to keep secure. So I don't think there's a right answer to one of those platforms, Jamie.
I kind of want to go back to what you were talking about earlier. So I know some districts don't do this, but we actually back up all our users' machines. We use a program called Backplane Pro E. So all the data is actually on site, and it's a continuous backup. So when somebody gets crypto locked, we store them pretty much instantly. And then all our group shares, they're all on ZFS, so they're all snapped out every 15 minutes. And so the one time we got a crypto lock on a group share, I can see if let's go back and do the backup.
Anybody else other ZFS too?
So one other thing on backup, we found out that you better back up not just your data, but the application server and the server along with the data, even if you do it separately, because the application vendors keep changing things, and you have to go back. We had to go back 4 or 5 years once with some data, and we couldn't find a box that could actually read and write the data.
So when you said, so the fear that keeps me at night as soon as they realize the value that's in our student information systems. Because in reality, like one of the conversations that always comes down to is, well, how big of a target are we really? You know, there are targets out there, and they get targeted because it's an obvious gain, and the school district hasn't felt that same type of pressure. But it's a matter of time before they realize that, yes, they will pay hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to stay functional, because their obligation is to stay functional. And if that means recovering all their student information systems, so we're, once again, a smaller district, so we take advantage of the NWRDC, they host our Skyward, and so we trust them to make sure that their systems are secure, that they've got protocols in place and backups. I don't really know what they are.
Well, we're under 2 threats. The ransomware threat, where they're going to pretty much blackmail us to get access to our information. But then we also, the fact we have valuable data in our SIS system. They haven't figured that out yet. They will. And at that point, I can guarantee you no superintendent wants to be on the front page that their school district lost their students' data. It costs the school district money. I know in Oregon, anybody better on the privacy laws than I am, but you have to buy the protection for 2 years. I think I'm pretty sure there's something about that. You have to buy the identity protection, and that stuff's not cheap, especially for 42,000 students. So, I mean, there's still a cost. It's just not in a blackmail scenario. But if it's not keeping you up at night, then you're a little too confident. I think.
And I think a lot of times when we talk about ransomware, things like that, we're all thinking, you know, like, okay, recover the backup, whatever. We have access to our own data again. That's fine. That's great. But you know, the HIPAA requirements just said if you have a ransomware attack on your computer, if it gets access to your data, that is a breach. And you have to report it as a breach. And when you start thinking about it that way, all of a sudden you're like, well, yeah, you know, I mean, we got the data back, but we had a data breach. Now we have to follow data breach protocols. That's not
Google
fun.
has data breach protocols. Anybody? Not alone. To be honest, I don't know what we would do in Salem. We would probably just play it by ear. But I'm actually going to, so I leave here Friday and fly to Vegas for a security conference, but it's not cybersecurity, it's physical security, because our stuff, cybersecurity and our response plan, should be in your district's emergency response plan. So
I had a chance to attend cyber force training. We have a cyber force people in Portland, Oregon,
FBI, Portland Police Department, Beaverton Police Department, they all work with the people who had ransom affected, and they ask us to educate ourselves, participate. They even offer to come to the school district and talk to the students. They even offer to take some students to come to their summer camp. So if anybody interested, I have a contact information, and because we're dealing with students, we better have them on our side and talk to them about ethical hockey.
How many of you have ethical hacking classes for your students? Anybody? I just found out about it a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, could you maybe involve the technology department? Who's going to be the person they're attacking? Who are they going to try this stuff on that they're learning in this class? They're going to try it on the network they're on. But we had no involvement. We will shortly. But it's a great place. If we truly want to do something awesome for our students, create a cybersecurity certification plan. I've been talking to my superintendent. I don't think I'll make any traction on it. But if you could create a 3-year plan, those students can walk out of high school into a 6-digit job like that. Cybersecurity experts are the #1 job in demand in the world right now. Over 1 million open jobs right now.
Did anybody hear from Manhood Community College? I heard that they have classes and they have students who have to sign non-disclosure, but one of the projects was have companies in Oregon who sign up for students to hack them and then report on results.
Right. And that's, so the approach I took with when I found out about this class was bring them into TIS, partner with us, attack us, but for the purpose of helping us, but make it more of a challenge instead of let me see if I can do it. There's let me see if I can do it because I can get this cool thing or whatever. Make it a challenge for them and a prize or something, recognition for finding weak spots in our network. That way you keep them on your side, because whether you like it or not, students are hacking your network. I've hired a few of them in the past.
Do you have anybody as interns working for you? I know Hillsborough School District had a program several years ago when they paid $7 an hour when it was minimum wage, so that's how far ago it was.
So we pay $15 an hour.
And who do you hire? And
so what we do is we have a 6-month volunteer internship program with a certain number of hours, and then they make it through that. There's a whole interview process they go through, resume application process, and then once they make it through that, we offer them a paid position for it. Usually it starts in the summertime, and we work with the HR department, make sure management all okay with that. And then we try and hire them around sophomore year, and then junior years when usually we start bringing on employees, and then by senior year they're awesome. Actually, it's phenomenal.
interesting enough, I've been stopped here at AC by the lady who was the very first interns that I was training.
We have a program like that too. I teach computer science and networking, server administration at a 0-period class, and we hire those students, the ones that are top of the class, if you will, and they work summers, and then during the school year, after one summer, then they can work during the school day. There's a lot of resistance from the superintendent to allow students to have access to server administration. So
one of the things we also do for them is if they continue to do well in the program, we pay for their A+ certification and for any of the CompTIA track that they want to go on, which we think is our way of giving them experience, training, and
you run that through CTE?
We don't actually. It's non-CTE, just through our department.
Challenge is to get the public funds for us.
We use discretionary IT budget because we treat their staff at that point as employees, so we just use our training budget.
That's words you don't hear very often. Discretionary IT budget.
In Kent, we have, at all of our high school locations, we have what we call career pathways. And in one high school, for example, we have a nurse program. And so the intent is that graduates will also have relevant certifications in those fields. And one of our high schools is our IT career pathway. And so we hire high school interns, college interns. We also have an apprentice level that kind of brings them up through the ranks of different training and experience, access, things like that, up through full-time employee.
That's what I was just about to say. Is Kent has had a very successful internship. It's something that I look forward to doing in the future, but I got to get my own house in order before I start inviting guests in. So
that may take forever.
Huh?
That may take forever. I tried that and I went, I can't do this.
It'll take a few more years.
We're just going to hire kids.
I bring in about 15 student helpers over the summer.
Yeah.
Invited back. But it'd be nice to have that internship, just to have a greater runway instead of just doing crap work.
We're going to pilot that this summer, hiring the college graduate interns. 1 year, no return, 12-month appointment, then off to the next group. Hire them in June, then by August they're ready to get an experience and walk out the door.
I would encourage it since I started working with Urban 16 years ago, and I've been in education ever since. So.
And like I said, I've had through Hermiston a few employees that have started as a student helper through the ESD and now work in Portland Public. So I think Twan started as a intern in Kent.
Yep, so did I.
Oh, see, there you go. So I mean, it's a great program. So I believe we're almost out of time. Steve, last one.
So we also have a big intern program. I pretty much haven't done account management for several years now. I've got 3 of them that work for me, and they just routinely train the next intern along. We tried high school students and had some issues, so we stick with college students in the local community colleges. And I'm pretty happy because I've placed at least 7 of them now with places like Amazon, Expediter, and stuff like that. The one thing I can say, at least in our area in Washington, the thing that gets the interns the job after they leave me is their scripting skills. That's the one thing that everybody's looking for. Python or Perl or something, that's what gets them hired. It's not that they know Windows or know Linux or anything else.
And I hear you're a scripting monkey. You're just a wild man at scripting.
All right. Hold on to your seats, folks.
We have a lot of scary topics. Here's one thing you can do and should do. It sounds like leadership thing, but it really comes down to us. Make sure that your organization can survive the loss of a person. I'm not talking suddenly fired. I'm talking dying. Share your passwords in some way. If this password all you know, that system is dead in the road because you're not there. So it sounds like when you want to be secure, you think there's ways to do it. There needs to be this one other person who has access to that, because otherwise they're locked out forever. We've been through this, and fortunately we've done it pretty much. We're still finding things years later that I don't know where that camera was, things like that. So yes, check. Find. I mean, it's easy to do. You set up the server so quickly. You don't document it and share it. It's gonna.
OneNote actually is a great tool for that.
So what?
OneNote.
Use
We
one
have,
password
yeah.
and share it with my boss and one other person.
My entire IT staff have access. So we should put it
So
all in
just
there.
think about this is continuity.
So one last thing to end with, to take off of his words, he says, it sounds like a leadership thing, but it's really you guys. Because I'm giving a leadership session tomorrow, and this is one of the things I'm going to cover, all of you are leaders in one way or the other. All of you need leadership skills in one way or the other, whether you feel like a leader or not. Be a leader, take charge over these things, and just walk the path. That's how you get growth in an organization. It's not something that's just going to happen. You have to lead the way, so to speak, for yourself. So I would say each of you is leaders in your own way. So gold sponsorship upstairs, half an hour, 15 minutes, 5:30 I think. If you want to draw for this, if you put something in there, throw your name tags up really fast. Anybody else? Last chance. It is a Samsung Galaxy Tab S3. Why you would want one of those, I have no idea.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Put one of these in.
5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Ron. All right. Anybody know how to read this QR code? I don't have a.
Use your phone.
Natalie Snow. There you go. Yeah.